My biography was on Steve Saint. You may be familiar with the story of Jim Elliot and his five friends who went down to Ecuador to reach the Auca Indians with the gospel, and then he and his four friends were killed. One of those men, the pilot, was Nate Saint, and interestingly, his sister Rachel and eventually his son Steve went to live with the Wadani tribe there in Ecuador to share with them the hope that God has sent His Son, that He can transform them if they are willing to walk His trail, and many of them did, in fact. And after Steve, grew up speaking the Waltadedo language and learning how to hunt and fish and be like these people, he moved out. He went off to college and he kind of had a normal life. He ended up being a missionary pilot in West Africa, similar to his dad, and he was very successful in the business world. But meanwhile, his aunt Rachel just was continuing to faithfully serve and minister to the Wadani people there in Ecuador. Churches were built, schools were built. Missionaries had kind of heard about this story from the magazines, and it became a very popular story. And so people were coming from all over the world to give and give and give and do things for the Wadani. Well, Steve comes back to visit because his aunt Rachel had passed away. He was coming for the funeral, which was a very significant event in their culture. And they asked him, "Hey, like your aunt is gone, and we need you to now come and live with us and kind of be an advocate for us." And he's like, "No way, I can't do that." But ultimately, through a series of incredible circumstances, he does. He and his family, his five kids, and his wife live there for a year and a half. He gets an airplane in, and he's able to fly flights for them. I think over 2,000 flights in a year and a half. He was there providing medical care and getting medical supplies, doing all kinds of incredible things for them. But almost as soon as he got there, he realizes like, hey, you don't use that church building that was built anymore, and it's kind of in disrepair. Why don't you fix it up and get back to using it? And they're like, well, we don't have permission. And he goes, well, whose permission do you need? And he's like, we don't know, but we don't have permission. And he came to realize pretty quick, if they didn't make it for themselves and they didn't take ownership of it, they didn't consider it to be theirs. And so he realized that if he did things for them, that when he left, it would just be done. That'd be it. But if he helped them do things for themselves and he kind of taught a man to fish, so to speak, then they would actually it would have lasting effect. And so he did. I mean, even as he's flying these missionary flights, he's training a guy named Tementa to fly and maintain an airplane. He ended up building a custom airplane for this man because he was only like under 5 feet, like 4'8", I think. And so he learns to fly a plane. And when they eventually did leave, they left behind a school and a pharmacy and a store, and their ability to acquire their own resources and meet their own needs. Um, but he brings Tementa back with him for more pilot training. He also brings Minkai with him. Minkai was the man who had actually speared his father, Nate Saint. That man was also the one who baptized two of Steve's kids in the water where their grandfather had died. Um, and so it's just this incredible story of redemption. But Minkai comes back to the States and he sees this war documentary and he starts to realize how Westerners kind of have a fascination with violence. And although he had repented of violence and been transformed by the gospel, he's seen sort of this modern fascination with violence. And he wants to tell people that like there's a better way. And so he goes on this tour and he starts to tell people about how he had been transformed by following Jesus and following the Bible, God's carvings. And I just want to read you one of the things he said. He ended up going to Columbine High School and many other places, speaking to mixed audiences. And this is what he said. He said, I am a true person. My ancestors lived angry and hating each other. That's how they lived. They didn't know any other way. The older people, my ancestors, went to the Cocoa River and they would just spear them. When they saw them, we speared them. But not only foreigners, we also speared our own people. That's how we lived. It was a bad way to live. My ancestors didn't know God's carvings. How could they walk God's trail if they didn't see God's carvings? I didn't know either until somebody came to teach me God's carvings, and then I began to understand. When I killed Steve's father, I didn't know any better. Nobody had come to tell us, and we didn't know that his father was coming to show us God's trail. And that's why we speared him. My heart was black and sick in sin. But then I heard that God sent his own son, his blood dripping and dripping. He washed my heart clean. Now I live well. I may never see you again here, but I will see you there. Speaking God's carvings all over the world, let's take lots of people following God's trail to live with us in heaven. God's place. So Minkai, the killer transformed by the gospel, ended up being a missionary to the West. And I think we need his message today. Thanks.